Let's do this live.
All right, it's live now. All right. So, meanwhile in hell.
Yeah.
Oh, hey guys, I know it's been like forever and ever and ever since I've bothered doing a live stream on YouTube, but because this is more semi-political, social, economic type topics, I'd rather keep this off some of my other streams. So we're just gonna go for it from here. Hey, my name is Pagan. Loki's joining us tonight to discuss basically the issues with overly high male suicide rates in conjunctions with today's forced feminist society. And we're going to go ahead and review a few things from as a woman's perspective have gone horrifically wrong and south in recent years because I just don't feel that there is a even distribution of either mental health or um, uh, basically the way society treats men at this point. I know we hear a lot about how society treats women supposedly or how they treat minorities supposedly, but the currently white male has been so demonized at this point that we're actually seeing nationally high suicide rates. We're seeing large instances of depression. We're seeing men get shafted, and that bothers me because it shouldn't be one sex over the other. So I'm gonna go ahead and open the floor, and you may talk, Loki.
Oh, thanks. Well, from my experience of what I've heard is that the and for men, most men really work through things by actually doing, not by necessarily meditating or connecting with their feelings, and that it's more by working through stuff. We like projects. We like to do stuff. We like to meet goals and move on to the next.
Differences among the sexes. As much as we want to say that, men and women can do the exact same things, yes, to a degree we can. But then there's also a larger degree where um, men and women are different. And there are lots of things that men can do better than women do, and a lot of things women can do better than men can do. And I think right now it's been kind of unfair that we've been getting boxed into this corner where women are expected to do everything, and to the point that men get pushed out too often. And that also, yeah, go ahead.
I can't imagine who told women they could do everything. Can't imagine what group that might be. The same group that criticizes women and calls them what, idiots or slaves or whatever, if they want to be homemakers or mothers.
Yeah, it's got God.
God forbid.
God forbid that one of us may want to come forward. The other thing that's annoyed the heck out of me, if we want to get deeper into the whole feminist eating each other type of discussion, and this is from my own personal experience, is we've come to like the feminists will blacklist other women if you don't toe the line. And I've experienced this unfortunately personally, where we've had uh, media fueled outrage over something as like even in the infosec community, where someone made a stupid joke in a slide, and it wasn't even that bad, and it was with his girlfriend. And if you'd actually listen to the whole joke, he wasn't really even demeaning her, but the offenderinas were offended, and because he made a silly reference, and they completely um, crucified this guy. And I got crucified by extension because I said, okay, well, I understand that you're offended by his joke, but are we maybe taking this a little too far? Like, seriously, in the grand scheme of things, was this one little stupid aside in a talk really that damaging and that bad? Because did it actually, who did it actually injure? And the thing with law is you have to have an actual injury in order to have a case. And it really didn't damage anything except for the egos of people that weren't even directly related to what the joke was. And but because I dared bring this up, saying, "Hey, maybe we should take a step back and actually examine this first," I now have internalized misogyny, and I've of course, I'm a horrible person because how dare I? So.
The offense and oppression Olympics are fun, aren't they?
Oh God, yes. Oh, it's well, I peg off my own because obviously I'm not only, and honestly I think I rate pretty high because not only am I pagan but I'm a conservative, and that's two groups that are traditionally aren't supposed to mix together. So I think I get extra brownie points because the conservatives seem to be more oppressed than anyone else at the moment, at least us old schoolers. But that's how that works.
See, when I was younger, I didn't used to be conservative at all. I don't think I consider myself, but now, yeah, definitely seeing society turn into this hedonistic hell pit.
Oh, but we love our
So
heathens.
I know, but there's do whatever you want that makes you happy, and then there's just when they start to try and mainstream
Chaos.
well, like relationships with children, relationships with animals, dream stuff that's apparently on the horizon now.
Mm.
Nothing is
Marrying a
ever
roller
enough
coaster.
for these people.
Marry a roller coaster.
Marry your diploma.
Yeah, there's been some weird ass shit going on in the news. I mean, we could do a whole stream on just weird shit from the news.
Well, look at all these women complaining they can't find a man, and their list includes the requirements, high paying job and all that. Meanwhile, they're the one working the high paying job. There are only so many high paying jobs to go around, and when women became able to work, or more accepted that women could work as well as men, you flooded the marketplace with jobs during a period over the last 100 years where you saw increased automation and increased demand for skilled labor, especially highly skilled labor. I mean, who wants to really spend half their life or more in fucking school just to get a basic job?
Well, that's what's weird about it is if you actually look at the actual jobs and the people that are actually hiring, they're no longer looking necessarily for like college degrees and stuff. And now there's the job market has started to change over to show me what you can do, which is good. It's actually that's very 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 good for a lot of people who especially um, didn't get a traditional degree in what their supposed field was supposed to be. Like my current job and the degree that I and the field I got my degree in are similar but not the same, and we're starting to notice that that's happening a lot more often too.
Yeah, I got an education. They didn't teach me shit. That was fun.
Well, on the plus side, you have an awful lot of applied knowledge, and sometimes applied knowledge is more important.
Yeah, unfortunately, with what I need to know and what I'm interested in, I need to be running my own company, and you know, that a company that size ain't gonna happen anytime soon. So,
Yeah. Chin up. And then, of course, being that this is pagan conservative, I like to cover some more interesting things, such as like perception versus reality on a lot of topics.
oh,
So,
how there seems to be a definite disconnect among the left and the feminist of what observable reality is.
yes, and that has been a big thing, and there's been a couple articles on that recently too. Um, so as far as and well, they've done it. I did a few studies, and I should probably go pull it again because I'm going to be paraphrasing. But there was again a study done where it was to try to see just how conservative slash liberal the country actually is. Because if you were to only watch the media, and if some alien is watching U.S. news and politics out on the outside of the solar system, they're going to be like, oh wow, there's like such. It's like you either have to be, um,
Nobody comes
it,
over anymore. That's
yeah,
why.
no one comes over anymore. So it's you either have to be like super super red or super super blue, and there's nothing that you can't have any in the middle. There's no purple. When the fact of the matter is, by the study, they're showing that there's actually a much wider purple, and there's actually only a very small extreme on either side. But the media skews that in such a way so perceptionally if you're not fully in agreement with everything in one column and not fully in agreement with everything in the other column, you have to kill each other. And that just seems to be how it feels way too often, which is unfortunate because that's not the actual reality of it. The actual reality of it is we're much more centric, we're much more moderate, although it is starting to, because of this repeated, along the lines of if you keep repeating something enough times, it just becomes truth because it becomes accepted. That's kind of what we're being forced into, is this whole division politics.
Well, I think the thing is too, most people are too goddamn busy working and trying to live their lives, and I think that might be by design. You don't really have revolutions in the classic sense, or like we had over the past 200, 300
Oh
years.
no no no! We have Twitter revolutions now, or Facebook revolutions, where we change our profile picture for a day.
Oh yeah, that does a lot. That really helps. But people are so tied down and bogged down. You just can't leave the farm with your kids and go off to war anymore.
I wish I could leave the farm with my kid and go off to war.
You have so many things tying you, and they they will execute you if you're on the wrong side if it comes to that.
Yeah.
But things don't really get done because people are too busy just struggling to get by, and I think that a lot of that is by design. I mean, once again, you have when both if you have a household, and this is less and less common now, where both parents they're two people, man, woman, parents, both working in that, when are they going to have time to really get invested in politics and do anything? They're too busy raising the kids, trying to keep their head above water, trying to manage their kids, little Jimmy and little Susie, little Bobby's, all their activities and that. So
And this is where it gets almost sad when you think about it. We're going into like how idiocracy has become a documentary because a lot of that unfortunately is seems to be coming true, and that's just depressing.
well, if I remember, studies have shown, and statistics play it out, that the more intelligent a woman is, or perhaps correctly, the more education she has, the less likely she is to have, more and more kids. So as education goes up, the amount of children goes down.
Yeah, and that is kind of understandable, coming from even my perspective, is just because you don't have time, and by the time you guys, by the time you get to that point where you are stable enough and feel that you finished college or you have time to have kids, you're pushing that older mark. You're pushing 30, you're pushing 35, you're pushing 38, and it becomes more difficult to have kids at that age. Like apparently, from my understanding, the prime time to have multiples is I think 32, and then after 32 years old, it starts getting more and more difficult. So
You're cutting out on my end.
okay, hold up.
But from what I've read, what I've heard, what I've seen, really early 20s is a good time to have kids in that. Past 32 or 35, you get an increased risk for Down syndrome and that. And it's funny that the feminists and the mainstream media is pushing women and couples to have kids older and older, because then you end up with a bunch of mentally handicapped children, dependents, giant resource drains. Sure, it's not their fault, but you don't have a next generation. That's just about as bad, if not worse, than people not having kids at all. And the people you want to be having kids are the most intelligent, your best and brightest. And we see that opposite effect. The people who have the most kids, it seems, are those that it's either for religious reasons, or especially where they don't think about the consequences. They don't care.
Yeah, or what I've been seeing, unfortunately, is a lot of people having kids for the absolute wrong reasons, and especially when you get into like low income situations where the father gets put in jail or is
You mean
separated.
Paycheck and Paycheck Junior?
Yeah, paycheck and paycheck junior, because then
Or
you got
the woman can't have the father in the house because then she won't get her welfare money.
yeah, and but which is unfortunate, but that's why the welfare system needs to be overhauled. I don't think that we should get rid of welfare entirely because there's definite needs and there's definite societal needs for a lot of things. I do believe it should be state. It should be focused on individual states, individual areas, because each individual community, I do truly believe, has slightly different needs than the next. But um, there has to be some sort of check and balance here. That
Yeah, welfare is supposed to be like disaster, worst case scenario. It's not supposed to be a way of life.
yeah, there's supposed to be a means to get off it, but it seems like it's made, and I've run into a lot of people, and this has been the issue, where it seems to have been made in such a way, especially if you get that, or if you have temporary disability or whatever, they seem to engineer it in such a way that if someone wants to get off it, they do it in a way that if you get to that point where you can get a job or you can get off it, there's no safety net, because what if you lose that job?
Yeah, they pull the rug out from under you.
Yeah, it's like there needs to be a time period of just to make sure that that's going to be a more permanent thing, because then you get people don't even bother looking for work because it's like, well, if I'm working, then I'm not going to have any fallback, and I might lose my housing, or I might lose whatever, because it's going to take more than one paycheck for someone to build up enough savings in order to be able to afford to, get a security deposit on a new apartment, or be able to afford to move out to some new place. So it's going to take, it may take a couple months before someone's ready to do that. It's not like, oh, I have a job now, it's going to be magic, and at the first paycheck I'm going to be able to afford all this shit, which would be great if it did. It'd be great if your bosses would prepay you for like 6 months, and then you could afford to get all that stuff in place. But that's not how it works. But
Well, that's another thing that pisses me off. People say, "Oh, why don't you get a better job? There are other jobs out there." Really, there aren't. There are limited number of jobs, and trying to climb your way up or find another one. Sure, it's easier to find a job while you already have one, but who has the time to do that while they're raising kids and managing their house and doing everything else, especially if you're a single parent?
what ends up happening if when you do go back to work and you realize that all your shit that you're supposed to be taking care of at the house isn't going to get taken care of unless you could hire a dragon butler and pay them in 4K monitors. But anyway, it doesn't work otherwise. Yeah, it gets very difficult. It gets very difficult. But again, there needs to be a safety net, and then again, and then that goes back to that whole paycheck
I don't
junior.
think we need safety nets so much as we need ways to make steps,
Yes,
progress,
and that's what
transition.
and that's what I mean. I think safety net for me is a transitional phase, where it's going to go from, okay, the goal for you, if you're currently on welfare and you have
Don't
whatever,
punish people for
yeah,
trying to become
yeah,
independent.
please, for the love of God, never punish someone for trying to get out of their situation. And that's what tends to happen way too often, is people are punished, like absolutely punished, for trying to get independent, because then they'll turn around being like, well, we said that you couldn't become independent because you had whatever problem, and now you're making an attempt to do it. Did you lie to us? I'm like, no, that person was in a bad state, to begin with, and now they're doing everything, they're in a better place, and they're trying to get out of it, but you're doing everything you can to pull them back down. And that's not good. That's not good. And neither is, using popping out kids just for the sake of getting a welfare check. And there needs to be some sort of check and balance to prevent that from happening. Because what needs to happen is, I don't know. And then there's been like serial welfare reseverance, where it's like the mom kept popping out kids, and then their kids started popping out kids, and it was just it's generations and generations on welfare, because there needs to be career training. If you're going to get a welfare check, I think that the government should provide some sort of career training, or they should provide there needs to be some kind of, you know, compensation to teach people, or to encourage people to, become independent, or to get off welfare. I don't care if it's like, okay, well, if you're going to be on welfare, that's fine, but you have to do X amount of hours stuffing envelopes in the welfare office. I mean, I don't care. There needs to be some kind of give and take, because then that, again, that'll encourage people to go find something else, or teach them a skill to go do something else.
Well, my issue is that, yeah, envelope stuffing. Who really needs that anymore? I think home
You'd be
care.
surprised. Yeah, home care. That's a whole nother. Yeah, go ahead. Explain that one.
Well, there we have an increasingly large aging population. People are more isolated than ever now. It seems, thanks to technology, or and these people need home care, and that's not the most complicated job in the world, but it is uh, very time intensive. I want to say most of these people need home care, multiple hours covering the entire day, and that from my experience seems to be in short supply. Also, regarding these women who have kids and that. Oh, I was going to say that one of the reasons that I think we're seeing that more and more is the push of welfare, get more people on welfare. Also, one of the tenets of both feminism and communism, which, if you look, feminism is pretty much communism. They're best friends. Is that the destruction of the family, so that everyone becomes dependent on the state? The state is
Yep.
mother, the state is father. And so you remove the father out of the household, it causes all kinds of chaos. Studies have shown that girls will reach puberty earlier when there isn't a stable man in the household, and that the kids really do need a father figure. That's the thing. All these women who say they can do it by themselves, they don't need no man. Well, studies show, and the psychology, and even the biology shows that. you need two parents really to effectively raise a kid, and then some,
Yeah.
preferably grandparents, aunts, and uncles to help. So maybe the parents can have a night out on that. But this lie that has been perpetuated to women that you can be a career woman and raise a family and go to the moon and be a NASCAR driver all at the same time is
Wait,
absolute insanity.
it's all
Who
at
would
the same
want to
time.
do all that?
All at the same time is hard. And that's very, very true.
They've been sold a lie of a life not based in reality. And I don't understand really what was so absolutely horrible about the way society was before. Sure, not everyone was happy all the time, but relationships are about compromises, and I think that's another issue with feminism and the mindset of women today is that you've got to compromise. You can't have the best of the best all the time, and you certainly can't have everything you want. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of these women, they have this Disney princess mentality. Maybe they don't even ever really grow up. They complain about man childs, men children, whatever they want to call them.
Man
These guys
child.
who don't ever grow up. Well, you could argue that they don't because they don't have realistic expectations from their partners, let alone society. All the things that they demand now. Oh, we have the right to work and vote. We want more. We want time off for this, that, and everything else.
Which, to a degree, I can understand when you're asking for stuff, but I do understand where they go, where it gets too far. And I know that the joke was the other day that they're going to start asking for time off for periods. Now, granted, sometimes you want to take those as sick days because sometimes they're really bad, but it shouldn't necessarily be mandatory because not everyone has that degree
Well,
of
the government
you know.
forces quotas, or companies internally force quotas of how many women you have to hire. You end up having a bunch of workers that don't produce, the women that don't produce as well as the men. They are not viable. They're not return on interest,
Well, and
I think
and
is what I'm trying to
and I
get
and I
towards.
know and I know where you're coming from. Is this is not a lumped thing. So if anyone's gonna go and attack Loki, number one, you have to go through me first, and number two, this is not a generalization that every single one of us is. I know where he's coming from, but I've also seen it where we've had a lot of women, and right now, well, in the technology fields, where I've seen this repeatedly, where it's been they come from a hospitality degree or they've worked in customer service at one point and now all of a sudden they claim that they can do a whole bunch of things that they're not really trained for, but they talk a good game, and then when they actually get into the position they can't do it. And what ends up happening is they make the next group of women look bad who maybe have put the work into it and have gone through you know uh, real world stuff and have experienced stuff firsthand or had gone through the training or went out of their way to get their certs. In fact, to the point that I've seen some of these women up on a pedestal just because apparently you can buy your way onto some of the women in technology lists. You can pay for it and they'll put you on the list. So they've bought their names onto a list that people don't realize are a paid list, and then when they fail miserably at their jobs, that makes the next person look like shit. And it's going to be the same group of people that are so supposedly threatened by men that they will refuse to even allow men in programming classes if it's in certain areas. Like there has been female teachers that have been told by some of these other women's groups that if they even allow men to show up in their trainings that they get blacklisted. It's not that they will be, it's that they do blacklist, because this has actually happened multiple times in the past where it's like, no, you may only teach women. You can't, it doesn't matter that you've had this student that you've been, that's been in your class for, or been, or you've known for 6 months, who said, hey, next time you give this training, can I come? He's not allowed because he's the wrong gender. You know,
Okay, hold on now. What about these women who sleep their way to the top and they create an environment, an atmosphere where that comes to be expected? Then you
yeah.
have the women who won't sleep their way to the
Oh
top
yeah, and
and
that's
they
just
lose
as
out on
yeah,
those
yeah.
opportunities.
And
And then
I've experienced that too.
afterwards, after they've attained these high level positions and that, they throw the men under the bus
Hmm.
when this was a mutual agreement.
Oh yeah, and that's happened. And I've seen that happen too. But I had a boss try to do that to me. And just for so I know if anyone that's in my subscribers list is watching this in the future, um, since I've been streaming, I have been sexually assaulted 3 times. Three. And it was finally the last one I got so pissed at that I went ahead and actually pressed charges. But this is not coming from a place of it doesn't have like I'm denying it happens, because no, I know firsthand that assaults and shit do happen, and I've had one of the first ones was by a boss of mine, actually, when I was working out in Hollywood. And he he thought it'd be a good idea to ask me if he'd shoot videotape him masturbating. And then later on, apparently he had just gotten a contract. He goes, "I'm gonna rub one off," and I'm like, "We're in a 1 room office." And
What is with these weird fucking fetishes?
I don't
Like,
know.
didn't they say Louis
God.
C.K. did that, and yet the women didn't leave the room? You're grown ass women,
Well,
walk the fuck out.
this is the thing, and that goes back to the whole Harvey Weinstein thing, where they're like, "Oh, well, this was a normal Hollywood thing." Unfortunately, it apparently is, and I'm not one of those people that wants.
Well, who is normalizing it? If the women
the liberals in Hollywood
start saying no. Well, no, if these women start saying no, the guys are obviously
well,
going to start
now
asking,
they
you
are
don't get arrested.
Yeah, now they are 30, 40, 50 years later, because that's a fairly
because
new
they've already
too,
gotten the money.
Oh, yeah.
These women already have the money. Their careers are over, and this is their last chance to be in the limelight,
and
the spotlight.
And that's exactly what it is. Because at the time when this stuff was happening, they just put up with it because whatever. And I'm guilty of that too. I put up with this shit for 3 weeks before finally I just got to a point where I'm just like, fuck you, I'm leaving.
Well, you needed the job though. That's the issue. You were putting in.
But the thing is, I was slave labor, literally slave labor. And what I was getting paid a week for working for this asshole was barely enough to cover my transportation. And
he should have been kissing your ass, not whipping his dick out.
Well, considering that I was doing like the work I was doing for him was I started calling around after like the second week of putting up with this shit. I started calling around other people I knew in the industry that were like, people that were actually worked as like line editors and actually done stuff and had worked and for like TV stations and things and for film, and I called back some of my professors and my advisors from school, and I go, this is not normal, is it? And they're like, oh God, get out of there. And I had my one friend that worked at the TV
You had
station.
to call and ask, hey, this guy keeps whipping his dick out. Is this normal?
But again, it goes back to that psychological issue where I was afraid to tell my husband. And we'll come back to stories later where
he would kill the man and you'd have to bail him out.
Kill him. Well, no, Loki knows because he was on the phone with me when the other one happened. But I'll get to that in a minute. So, when I'm going through this, I'm thinking, okay, right now, because when we moved out to California, when we were first out there, we were under the impression that we both had jobs. I was supposed to have been starting a job at the company that makes the software that I'm trained on. And my husband was supposed to have been starting a job at another startup doing networking. And so when we were still back in Georgia, they promised us up and down, don't worry, just come out here as soon as you can, because we were just getting married. It was literally, we got married, and 2 days later, we packed up a moving truck and moved to California. So they go, okay, well, just, finish your wedding, come on ahead, you have jobs. So we got married. We figured, okay, we're good. We both have work. They said we're going to show up on Monday and we're going to get our paperwork done and we're good to go.
Funny thing about that.
Yeah, that's not how it works. That's not. Don't ever do that. Always have fucking shit in writing. Always. That was lesson.
I want
big lesson learned.
For the show, I want the sound effect of Ron White saying Georgia.
Georgia. Well, not right now because put it in the show notes and I'll get that for you later. But yeah, so we get out there and we had our shitty apartment, which we got on the street that was the same street that my work was supposed to be at, but we didn't realize. Now we're coming from Atlanta, which is a driving city. I'd never been out to Los Angeles before, and I didn't realize how far 10 miles was in LA. It's like another state. It's insane. And but we ended up moving in this apartment in Koreatown, this little studio. We were trying to fit our house into there. We couldn't, of course, didn't fit. It was just stacks of bins, floor to ceiling. And so we're dealing with this $900 a month with no parking shithole with like the worst manager I'd ever had ever. And we go and we go, okay, well, we're gonna make it work. It was us and our 2 dogs at the time. We had our two of our pups with us because I don't get rid of my animals. So We get this to this place and we move in, and then like 2 days, a day later, Monday comes and we go down to where we're supposed to have our jobs. We both go in, and they're like, oh, okay, well, we may have something later. I'm like, you told me I had a paid internship and I could start whenever. And I went ahead and talked to one of my other classmates who was doing the same thing, and she goes, "Oh, I wish I'd warned you because this HR person, lies through her damn teeth, and you should have had everything in writing." And I'm like, "Son of a bitch!" So I was shit out of luck because they're like, "Nope, sorry, no job for you." And I'm like, "Fuck." And then I go to my husband, same shit happened to him. They decided that, oh no, we're not going to do this now. But apparently that's normal for California. That's an LA thing. So we're now literally on the other side of the country from
So what
where.
you're saying is I should move out to California.
Actually, in your particular case, because of the laws in California, especially how they treat disabilities and everything else, you probably would be fine. But and there's a few other things that we learned about California in the meantime. But coming from the East Coast, we didn't realize that this was a thing. Like basically in California, um, it's extremely hard to evict people. So if we had just decided to not pay rent, we could have probably just stayed where we were for the next 6 months at least before they could have evicted us. But we didn't want to be there because it was a horrible, horrible place.
How is this state not bankrupt yet? Holy hell.
It is. It's California's. Well, remember California's on fire at all times.
And they're trying to tax text messages
Hey,
now,
hey
and they're trying
guys.
to make it retroactive past 5 years back. So
Well,
good
you
luck
you
collecting on that.
about what time did 502 wander into this amazing conversation?
Not sure.
Welcome to hell. No, we're discussing some stories that happened that have actually happened to me, and can back and forth. So anyway, so I go out and my job doesn't exist, and then my husband goes out and his job doesn't exist, and so now neither of us have jobs. We have $900 a month for this apartment. We only have so much in savings, very little. Basically, it was all the money that we got for our weddings. I think we had maybe $5,000 total from like wedding gifts and shit. So that was as long as we could float. So we had maybe like a month or two's worth of rent, that we could float on, but it wasn't going to be enough. So we had to hurry up and find something. So I start going, trying to do whatever I can. The first job I had. Oh yeah. California's totally bankrupt. I totally agree with that. There's like, and that's why everyone's moving. They've, and I'll get to that too because this was part of my California experience. Um, so, uh, my husband gets a job at a cannabis shop as a network tech. Um, I ended up finding my first job that I had out there was doing video editing on naked guitar videos. So my first job was in porn, to be honest, and apparently that's normal. I wasn't in porn on camera, but I was editing like soft porn, I guess you could call it. But it was in the thread of naked
She's a
news.
classy lady.
I was in the thread of like naked news. So if you had ever seen how the Russians do naked news, where they're just these very pretty women, and they're very straight faced, and like as they're doing it, they're like slowly just like taking their tops off and undressing during this news broadcast, but it's all straight. It's just totally just deadpan the entire time, but they're just stripping. It was similar to that, where these were greased up, very, very good looking women giving guitar lessons. So it was just like normal guitar lessons, except the person giving the guitar lessons is a naked model. And so I'm doing this editing on this because at least he was paying me a couple $100. At least it was something, and it was enough for me to buy food. And so my husband was making enough money that he was able to just about float rent. And then I was making enough to basically cover enough to buy dog food and food for us, even if it was like basic shit. And we were doing everything we could to stay off welfare because we didn't want to have to go that route. We managed to do that too. We managed to not ever have to get on government assistance, but it was a struggle. And yeah, it's true though. It's true. It does. And that's where, to be honest, and most people that work out there won't admit to it. But almost everyone that starts out in Hollywood starts in porn, um, in one way or another. Even if it was like I was on the back end. Ha ha ha. Anyway, so oh my god. So that didn't last for too long, and then I moved on to the other job. Fuck, I'm gonna call him out because this asshole deserves it. So I then took a paid internship. It's supposed to be paid internship, and yeah, paid's a joke. Honestly, I think he paid me $100 a week, but he didn't tell me that until like my first paycheck. But he also demanded I be there at 8 o'clock every morning, and he refused to let me leave until after 5. So I had to be there the entire day, regardless what was going on. Um, and this was the guy that I was talking about earlier. That was my first actual like sexual assault case. And so I was there. I think I was there 3.5 weeks total. I never got my last paycheck. And when I actually did the math, I think he owed me well over like $5,000 because California is very specific about what your minimum wage and your going rates are. And you're supposed to pay your interns at least minimum wage, and he was paying me less than $2 an hour, so you can't do that. Um, and
You
this
have
was
a butler on retainer. It sounds like you need a lawyer on retainer just to try and get the people to pay you what they owe you. Jesus.
Yeah, probably because there's a few other. Well, hell, don't you know about that one firsthand? Um,
Yep.
yeah, I'm continually getting screwed. I'm too nice. Um, so so yeah, don't be nice to people. That was lessons I should have learned, but I haven't. Uh,
No good deed goes unpunished.
that's what I told you. Never. So anyway, um, so this guy, I'm out there and I'm trying to do my job. I'm trying to do some editing work, and he starts. He asked me. I think it was the third or fourth day on the job, and he go. And I think he was trying to see what I would do, and he goes, "So, wait, would you videotape me and my wife going at it, or would you videotape me masturbating?" And I'm like, the cameras has remote control. I'll set up the camera for you and leave. And he's like, no, and I want you to be behind it. I'm like, no. So I refused. And like a couple days, like a week later, apparently uh he had gotten a contract, and he had Dave Scanlon from Slappy Studios, asshole. So he goes and he literally starts. He goes, I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. I just want to rub one out. And I remember we're in an office. Yeah, well, that's where I've gotten to too. I now have contracts, but this is me first out of college, like my very first like 2 3 months after I've like graduated and moved on. And um and so we he goes, I'm gonna rub one out. I'm like, all right, no. How about you wait until you get home and you do that in private? And I'm we're in an office where it's one room. It's like I don't know, it was a maybe 10 by 10 space, if that. And I'm like, no. I'm like, can you please don't? And he's like, I'm gonna rub. I'm like, okay. So then like 5 10 minutes later, goes, I'm gonna do it anyway. And all of a sudden I hear fat 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 fat. I'm like, ah. So you can just imagine how I'm feeling, because
I bet this guy still gets dates too. I have
you know
manners.
what? Last I've heard, he got the shit kicked out of him by a client, and his entire studio was thrown, and his
What?
studio was thrown out of the building. And at the time, we
I'm gonna
shared.
miss him.
Not really. We shared a building with one of the major subtitling companies that did all the anime. So we were like right next to them, and he like rented an office like inside their offices or something. It was a weird setup, and we were right next to Vivid too. So it was just the San Fernando Valley is bizarre. So oh my god, it's like we're just right like Universal City ish. But no, oh my god, yeah, no, he was horrible. And then it got worse. Then he started blackballing me. He started threatening to blacklist me like all over the place, because that was the reason that didn't end right away. Because he started in with the whole intimidation. Don't you say anything, or I'm going to tell all the other studios that you don't do any work and you're lazy. And all he started just telling me all these things. And that lasted for a little bit. And then I had a friend get me an interview at a major VFX company. And so I ended up going to that interview, and that wasn't until after I walked out. But I knew that I had an interview coming up, and I just prayed. And I walked. Um, I actually called the Better. It's not Better Business. It's like California has like an employee, an employment office type thing. And I told them what happened, and I should have gone ahead and gone through with the whole thing and going to the court date, because I could have probably gotten a payout and he would have gotten charges against him. But it was like my court date that I need to show up was like the same day that my grandmother passed, and I'm like, I can't. I'm like, it was too much stress to begin with, and every time I saw this guy, and Loki's seen me in person, so we're pretty close, and he knows that I can be a bit of a tough ass if I need to be, but I can also melt, and you've also seen me crumble into a horrible little puddle of anxiety. And so anytime I saw this guy, I would that was the route I was taking at the time, was I just could not handle it. And And so I'm like, no, I can't. I'm working a job now. I'm getting paid. Like we're doing good. You know, we'd moved on by then into a better living situation. And I just like, I can't do it. And so oh my goodness, but no, but he, like I said, he, from last I heard from I'm still sometimes keep in touch with the lady that was at the front desk. I remember the day I walked out too, because he that was like it was like a day or two after he threatened to blackball me, so I wouldn't be able to get a job at any other studios. And so I remember I handed her my keys. I told her what he did, and she's like, oh no. and I let her know. I go, you warn any other female that goes in there. And I already called my college.
That's all she said was, "Oh."
Oh, no, 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 she made sure, because she kept an eye on him. She told her bosses. They started watching to make sure. And I told her, like, you watch any females, anyone, you warn them. And she would. They did. But of course, the way it was is, he had, apparently he had done, they're not commercials, but they were like short films for like Transformers, for the Transformers movies. So there was a whole series of ones that were put on YouTube for their advertising campaign, where it was like people had actually shot video of Transformers wherever. And so he had done one of those that made it into, like, I guess either the DVD or made it into the advertising collection. So he'd gotten like a couple $1 million. That's how he started his studio, but he squandered all of it. So that's what had actually happened. But this guy was just, oh my god, it was horrible. And yes, I know, I ended up walking. It was safer for me to walk though, because he was escalating. So it went from asking me if I would, to like actually, like, masturbating like in front of me, to starting to threaten to blacklist me. And I'm like, I don't know how far this is going to escalate, because he seems to keep pushing it and trying to, talk me down, and trying to, what's the word for it? Um,
That's fucking horrible. Also, is that
oh
how you flirt with women? I mean, it's
no, no, no,
should I
that's
give up on the whole cuddling thing and just whip it out? Like, hello, ladies.
no, please don't. It's not good things, which is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. No, that's just, he was a friggin' monster. And and like, I don't, I'm glad. Well, oh my god, karma. So who wants to hear what happened? How I fucked him over of a couple $1 million contract years later. Years later, because he basically had told me that
Several years later.
several years later. This is the same guy. So I had left. I'd already worked at my other studio job, my big studio job, and I left and come back to Georgia with my husband. We moved back here for a little bit, and I worked in New Orleans for a while, another company, and then I went back out to work for a startup. And I was at that startup from, like, I think the third month they were in business, and so I grew with this startup, which means that the owners of the company knew me because I was one of the original, like, 45 employees. And we had gone through so many things by then that we had expanded twice, and we actually outgrew 2 buildings. So at this point, I'm in a company where the owners of the company and the CEO and all the higher ups and the production managers know me because they've worked with me for over a year. And this guy comes through as one of our outsourced studios. And so my job at the time was managing a lot of the outsourced studios. And so I would get there, once they went through production and production approved to use the studio, and had their contract in place. They would send their email and contact information for me to start their data accounts. So I was in charge of the data transfer servers and a lot of the company IO. So I made sure that they had all their passwords and all their stuff set on our end. Well, this comes through my email, and I see who it is, and it goes Dave Slabby Studios, and I just, again, like I said, this is like 3 years later at least, and I just, again, Loki, you see me melt into these puddles of anxiety attacks, and I just like hyperventilated and wanted to crawl under my desk, and I started crying, and this was before, and I don't, I think my coworker wasn't there at the time, so I was alone in my office when this happened, and I'm having a full out panic attack. And so finally, I'm able to breathe again, and I go upstairs, and I'm shaking. And I talk to the head of production. I go, I need to talk to you about this right now. And I told him what happened, and he just kind of looks. He's like, we weren't really sure because he seemed kind of shady anyway. Don't worry, we'll take care of it. And they immediately fired him. And apparently, I cost him like Apparently, it cost them a couple $1 million because that was like that whatever the outsource was for the what we were working on at the time. Oh
Good.
no, no, I felt so liberated after that because it's like this is the same asshole that's like you'll never have a job, never be able to do anything, and no one will ever hire you. And I'm like, okay, well, guess what I just did. So sometimes
Now
karma
you fucked up.
fucked up.
You have fucked up now.
Oh my god, yeah. So so that's one of the reasons why it's like sometimes if you just wait it out long enough, things happen. But at the same time, it's just like okay, well, the universe took care of that. Thank goodness. But that was the first one that did that kind of shit. And then also in Hollywood, first time around. This is why again no good deed goes unpunished. Um, I had been I got kidnapped. I got kidnapped, and that was fun. My husband got kidnapped, and I went and had to go get him. And the dumbass slapped the phone out of my hand when I was calling 911. Don't do that. Except this time, I had already been through the first idiot, and the first idiot had got me to a point where even though he was causing panic attacks, the second idiot just made me mad. And Loki is also seeing me mad. So if it goes to where I'm mad, it's much worse.
It's scary as fuck.
It's if I'm not having an anxiety attack, I'm having an anger issue to the point that it's like I grow about 4 feet, fire shoots out of my eyes, I grow claws, bat wings, and you better get the fuck out of my way. So that was what happened with this guy. Was I turned into a fucking dragon, and I don't care if you're 400 pounds piece of shit. I basically told him to go fuck himself. He tried to lock us in his apartment, and so running on pure adrenaline, I grabbed my because it was for a computer repair, and he's an asshole, and so I'm like, no, I need to get my shit back. And I unplugged while I was doing the backup. I unplugged the hard drive. I grabbed the bloner laptop that he was supposed to give back to us. And then he tried to, like I said, he tried to lock us in. And after he slapped the phone out of my hand, I grabbed my phone. I looked at him and go, "You can go fuck yourself." And I told my husband, I'm like, "We're leaving." And enough of this shit. Because remember, I had just come off of a night shift because at the place I was working, the studio I was working at, I was working nights, and it's now like 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and I am tired. And so, yeah, so I went and unlocked the door. I'm like, I'm not fucking stupid. I can know how to unlock the fucking door. So I unlocked the door, grabbed my stuff. He's thundering behind the stairs, down the steps behind me. Yeah, you tell your mother you talk without your damn mouth. I turned around and told him to go fuck himself, and then I left. By the time we got in the car and I drove 2 blocks because it was over by Sony, I think I had to pull over and I was just shaking because once you come down off those adrenaline highs, it's absolutely horrible. Um, but we got out of there. And then the police ignored us in the morning, which I know, again, Loki, you know exactly how that shit is when the cops are complete assholes. So we went to try to report what happened, and the cops blew us off. They're like, oh no, whatever. Just they ignored it and blew us off. So I had to go back later that evening and talk to the second shift. And second shift took me seriously. So we had to go talk to a different set of officers entirely, and they actually took shit seriously. And then we got a restraining order at the courthouse, and so I was up probably for at least 24 hours. It was horrible. I think I had to call him to work that night, which sucked even worse. But no, it's like no, shit happens. Um, but at the same time, we get the other side of it, also Hollywood stories, where it's the guys are being assaulted by the girlfriends. And so the reason I tell those other stories was so that there could be an understanding that just because I've had those bad experiences, part of the reason that I'm a practicing Celtic Reconstructionist Druid is because our tenets of beliefs is that there has to be balance and you have to look at everything. So just because I'm getting screwed over doesn't mean that a guy can't be too. And we had in our first apartment, the little studio where I was working the same time as at Slutty Studios, our upstairs neighbor had an abusive girlfriend, and she'd gotten him thrown in jail twice for self-inflicting, and she was horrible. And so, but I've seen this, and it's always the guys that get arrested. It doesn't matter. And he was the sweetest person in the entire world, and we were right downstairs, and so we heard everything, so we knew it wasn't him. He kept trying to de-escalate. He kept trying to de-escalate, and she would just keep coming right at him, keep coming right at him, keep coming right at him. And And yeah, so but it's like, and oh man, you don't want to be thrown in jail in LA either, because you can't afford bail. It's horrible. If you get your car, if you get a ticket on your car, I think it was like $600 to get your car out for some of those tickets, and then if you get a DUI in Los Angeles, it's like 2,000 or something ridiculous. But I'm sorry, Loki. I took the floor for an awful long time because I have all these damn stories. So if you have anything you want to add,
That's fine. I'm just multitasking.
alrighty. But yeah,
I
so
enjoy story time as much as the next person.
well, I'll see if Chad has any questions at this point. But but yeah, no, things get nuts. But that was the first one where I experienced it was the abusive girlfriend story, and I have a couple of these because out of the 5 domestic abuse cases that we've been privy to that I've dealt with, 4 of them were the woman, and only one of my friends was actually her husband, and that was really complicated. He was cheating on her. There was money being stolen and that kind of thing, but the other 4, 2 of them ended up with like self-infliction, and then it was just multiple cases like this where it would be like it was the women taking advantage because they know, unfortunately, in most cases, and again, Loki can explain some of the history behind this. It's made the point where um, men are automatically assumed to be at fault. Even if the man calls the police on an abusive girlfriend or wife, um, he will get arrested for a lot of states. And
Well, that's because most law enforcement and especially the legal system has been taught the Duluth model for about 30 years now, I think it is. And the Duluth model was a bunch of bullshit, not based in reality, that a bunch of feminists came up with, I think, in Duluth. So, yeah, that's pretty much helped to destroy a lot of relationships, a lot of marriages. That's taken fathers away from their children and that. So, thanks, feminism.
yeah, and the whole point, and this is again, you get this. Uh, but back when it had started, and I mean, I'm all for women deserve to have equal rights, but again, I'm an equality type woman. I'm an equality person. You know,
So equal rights and lefts?
equal what?
Equal rights and lefts?
Well, anyway, but I can't. I missed that because ears don't work. So, but equal rights as far as if we have the opportunity to do the same things. But I also believe that you have to earn that opportunity. And this goes back to firefighting. Yes, that's what my boy. Yeah. Um. So yeah.
But is it, how can you have equal rights when you do not have equal
Well,
responsibilities?
and that's my whole point. Is if you have equal rights, you have to have equal responsibility, and that's why. And this goes back to what happened not that long ago in a New York fire department. And again, fire is very close to me. Um, because I managed to earn my spot on 2 local fire departments. And when I say earn my spot, I mean I did all the training right there with the guys, and sometimes occasionally better than the guys as far as hustle goes. But that's how it is. Is I believe that if I'm gonna do this shit, I'm gonna bring myself up to where I can actually do it. And again, Loki has met me in real life, so he knows that I'm not fucking around when I say this. I got on the fire department. Actually, I applied to be on it after I had dropped some weight, so I had to get down to at least 200 pounds for me, and then I started going to the gym because I knew if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to be able to do it with the guys too, and then start working myself up to be able to handle what they have to handle. Because one of the things you have to do if you're on the fire department is you have to be able to have ease of movement in 100 pounds of gear. And then on top of that, you have to be able to lift and pull at least a 200 pound, 250 pound human. And that is one of the things that we had to that I trained for, was so that I had to be able to lift probably close to 500 pounds by the time you got your legs planted and your center of gravity correct. And so we went ahead and we did this, and some of it's leverage, but then some of it's also just working out and getting used to doing that. Um, and yeah, I can pick up a 250-pound human and drag them because I can do that. So uh, they're getting down to all that. So I worked my ass off, and I did the physical requirements. I learned how to do the proper breathing on twos for the SCBA requirements, because not only do you have to do all this shit, you have to do it blind with a mask on, with air on. And in order to preserve your air, because if you're panicked, or if you're having an anxiety or panic attack, or you're overworked up, you can go through that bottle of air that may last 45 minutes if you're using it properly in less than 15, because that's just how the breathers work. But I went through all my training. I did my module AB. I did my mandatory, and then I went on. I did firefighter 1, I did firefighter 2. I took FOST, which is fire officer strategy and tactics. I took all my hazmat classes. So I had hazmat awareness. I went all the way up to hazmat tech, and then I went ahead and I got trained as an EMR. And then I got trained as an EMT, and then we took all the little classes in between. So I worked my ass off. So, and again, keep this in mind. I've worked my ass off. I've done all the training. I've made sure that I hit the marks that the boys had to make too. There was no difference between my training and what the men in my class were getting, and I was not given any breaks. I had to do it. Even shit that scared the crap out of me. Like, we had to go up on a 3-story ladder, lock our legs, and hang upside down with full gear on. And again, I don't like heights, but I did it because I had to. Because there's some shit you just have to be able to do. It's a safety thing. Well, a couple years ago, one of the women who was going for NYPD, she passed all her classes. She was really good on books, but she could not drag that 250-pound dummy down a closed corridor in the time that was allowed. And I make a point of telling you that I have done this because we had to go in and do RIT and rescue. And if she was not capable of building herself up to the point where she could handle doing that, and the reasoning behind it is you have to be able to pull out another firefighter, which is why whatever weight you're carrying, you have to be able to double it. That's why. Because the assumption is that that next firefighter is going to weigh at least the 250, if not more, because of the gear. And so that's the reason why they have to do it. Plus, New York Fire Department, that's a lot harder shit. I mean, you're talking about high-rise buildings. You're talking about, much tighter constraints on time. At least where I'm at, it's rural, so we don't have there's some things that aren't as likely to happen, but that's an everyday thing for them. And the fact that she bitched and moaned that it was unfair that they wouldn't pass her because she couldn't meet a physical requirement, and then they passed her anyway, pissed off a lot of women in fire EMS, because the rest of us worked our asses off to get where we were. And the fact that they just handed it to her because she complained, that's infuriating. So yeah, so I honestly believe if you're going to have equal rights, you better damn well put off the equal effort.
Well, you can just go around to prove this. You can just go around and ask how many women have a selective service card.
None of us do. I don't think any of us do. And that was something I didn't even find out was a thing until I was probably in college, because they'd pull the boys aside in high school, and they'd go off to their meeting, but they'd meet on us. Which again,
Well, you need that to vote. You need that.
Yeah.
I think it's to vote to get student loans, anything like that.
Well, yeah, the guys do, and also certain jobs, especially clearance jobs. If
Clearly, women are at an advantage in that situation. I don't hear feminists complaining about it.
Yeah, and that is something, you kind of question there too. It's like, well, if this is something that, well, I think in Israel that's automatic. Everyone in the country is in reserves. So I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to that either.
But are we really going to put women in frontline combat?
Well, there's other well, it depends on the woman. It depends. I mean,
If men are expected to serve in every position in the military, why are we making special rules for women when they are supposedly equal?
and again, it goes back to if you're physically capable of doing it. And that's the other thing. Military does have different physical requirements because they recognize that there is
And
there is difference.
not all men can meet them, but I will bet there are a lot more men that can meet them than women that can.
Well, and again, like I said about the whole firefighter thing, those of us that wanted to do it for real and be able to pass our shit worked our asses off. And so I would rather have someone that has made sure that they are to a level that they can handle it.
Well, it almost seems like women are role playing. They're doing real life role play with
Time
this
out.
stuff, saying, "Oh, look at me."
Time out. So is everyone registered when you get a FAFSA? we're discussing men and women, or is it only the men that are registered? Because I'm going to go ahead and go down to see what a teammaker has to say. So I'm going to go ahead. I think we're 10 or 15 seconds behind, so we're going to give this just a little bit to catch up. But because what he says in chat is it's only for student loans, and he goes, and when you get a FAFSA, you're automatically registered, so don't touch something you know nothing about. Okay, yeah, okay, and that's what I was wondering, because it's not so much frontline stuff, and that's why I said it kind of depends, because it's my understanding that, like I said, if someone can make it, and they do, and I'm gonna let Teammaker correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that when they test you, they try to find your aptitude and put you where you're going to do the most effectively. Um, Although a lot of today's military has gone digital, which is very true too. I mean, we still have infantry. Army still has a lot of infantry stuff, but it's not. It's not as. It's not like it was back in like the Revolution. So, but I think more what the question was why don't women sign up for selective service? So that's what my question is are we automatically signed up for selective service on our FAFSAs, or is it only the men that are signed up for selective service? If you check the I'm a male checkbox.
You're breaking up really badly on my end.
Oh, it might be Discord. It might be me. So I don't know.
Damn you,
Discord was
Discord.
horrible last night. I'm gonna give him another minute or two to respond, and if I don't get if it's not there, then we'll move on. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move on. So I'm gonna just go ahead and go. I'm not sure about that point because there's contention, and I would have to go. If you want to go pull up double
Well,
check
does that mean the cook is the same as special forces?
as
Uh,
mm, okay,
okay.
okay. Um, Lots of stuff has changed. Yeah, and that's why I'm asking. I don't think women still don't, to my understanding, get signed up for selective service, and that's more where the point is on this. Is what Loki's saying is that it seems unfair if you're going to push for all this equality and still have special considerations based on your gender. And I do kind of agree with that. Like, and then I do, and it should kind of be all or nothing. Um, so that is something to think about. And then what was the other point? Because now I lost it. All right, well, let you guys move on. So you have another topic you want to push towards, or do you still have things you want to?
I think I'm good for tonight.
Okay, well, we are at 10:30. Oh, no, 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 we're not saying it wasn't open. Everything is open to everyone, is my understanding. It's just that
But
it's
can they do it?
but can't, we're more pushing towards the who's physically capable. And my push is if you're willing to train and you're willing to put forth the effort to get to that point where you are able to not be a burden on your unit, then that's one thing. But if it's someone that goes in like this firefighter in New York City did, where she was unable to pass the physical requirement and then legislated her way onto the department anyway, that is a problem. So that's where I have a problem with it. I have no problem if someone like me or any other people that I know work their asses off and get there. I do have a problem if someone gets there not by their own merit. And I think that's really I hope that clarifies it. Is that's really what the discussion is. It's a merit based discussion. And I think that's where we're at. But yeah, we're going to probably wrap this up tonight because I do work in the morning. And so I'm going to go ahead and end stream. But we may go ahead and do this as a weekly thing. I might come back. Depends on the kind of feedback I get. But these will be fairly short, probably an hour long. If anyone wants to add in the comments topics that they might be interested in us kind of playing around with, or if someone wants to message me if they ever would want to come on as another speaker, I'm fine with that. But we might just go ahead and do these meanwhile as in hell on as a once a week or bi-weekly, just to help get some crap off our chests and do some venting. But all right, I hope anyone that's watching had an interesting enough time with my crazy story times. I have many crazy stories, and I guess we'll see you.